Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Side Retired with your host, Stratton J. Davis. Today, I have with me a former San Francisco Giant and Oakland A, as well as member of the Utah Sports Hall of Fame, Mr. Kelly Downs. Mr. Downs, thank you very much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a
All
pleasure to
right.
be with you.
Great to have you. Let's get right to it. First, I just want to ask you, I know you grew up in Utah and you had a big brother, Dave, who also pitched in the major leagues for a short time with the Phillies. I just got to ask, what was growing up in Utah like, and was having Dave as your big brother and him going to the MLB and having a bit of that experience, did that have any kind of influence on you and kind of inform you on what you needed to have in you to make it?
You know, I, he was gone when I was a kid, so he was out playing already. So sad to say, when it came to me probably needing some help or wanting some instruction when I was young, he just wasn't there. He was out playing. Now, when I was 12 years old, when he got called up in September, that was a different story. My dad took myself and my brother back to Philadelphia, and we watched him throw against the Cubs game. He threw 4 games in the major leagues in September, and after that, he hurt his arm somehow, and he really never came back again. So it was kind of a sad deal.
Well, regardless of that, then what was growing up in Utah like playing baseball down there? I'm not too familiar with the baseball in Utah.
Well, it's the climate's not the greatest. We can have snow. I remember as a kid having snow in May. High school baseball games start in March, and you're always scraping snow off the field. But really, Utah's a pretty good baseball state now. Like most states, there's good programs here. A lot of comp teams. High school, I coached after I got them playing. We went to California and competed in some tournaments, and actually competed very well against California teams. But I love Utah. I came back here. It's a great place to live, and it's just been really nice. Good people.
So you ended up getting drafted by the Phillies out of high school, I believe. And I got to ask, did your brother's experience with the Phillies have any reason for that?
Well, that's a good question. I really think it did, because he was drafted by the Phillies. I was looked at by a number of teams, but finally signed with the Phillies. Kind of a long story. I hurt my back before the baseball season started. So I was able to pitch some high school games, but I was drafted low. They told me I'd go higher, probably like they tell everybody. But as I got healthy through the summer, they came back to me and started offering me a little bit more money to sign. I did sign a letter of intent to go to Brigham Young. So I would have had to sign before September 1st, in which I did. So I wanted to play pro ball. So that's kind of my story. And about that time, I had a girlfriend, high school sweetheart, and we ended up getting married too. So it all worked out.
Well, how did you find out you got drafted by the Phillies? Because I know I've asked other dudes that, and it's always an interesting story there.
I knew the draft was happening, but I knew with my back that if I win, it would probably be low. And I had a guy, a neighbor, who was our coach since we were 8 years old. And he called me out of nowhere and told me I'd been drafted. I can't remember what round, 26th, 28th or something like that. It was low. But anyway, yeah, I found out through a former coach and a neighbor.
So, what was it like going through the minor leagues with them? Because you didn't end up playing in the majors with them, but you kind of sped through the minors pretty quick with them. And then in '84, before you got traded to the Giants, you kind of sat there for 2 years before getting called up. But what was the minor league experience like with the Phillies?
It was good. It was some of the best times of our lives, great memories. It was hard. When I signed, I was able to go to what they call instructional league, which is in the fall. And they really didn't want to take a high school kid they hadn't seen in the instructional league, but that was one of my things. If I'm going to sign, I want to go. And actually, I did really well. So that kind of pushed me along to move up rather quickly. I played 2 years of A ball, Then I got up to AAA really quick. And in between that, I went to winter ball in Venezuela and ended up leading the league in wins and innings pitched and ERA. So that really boosted my chance. The Phillies actually gave me a chance to make the team, and I think it was in 82, 83. But I pitched a lot of innings in A ball, plus over 120 in winter ball. I was really just tired. First year AAA, had the worst year of my life, baseball wise. I ended up 2-15. We were on a team that lost 96 games, and it was a tough year. Tough year on my wife too.
So did you go to the spring training with the Phillies?
Not my first, on my second year, not on my second year, on my third year, they put me on the major league roster. So after that, yes, I went to big league camp with them for 3 years.
So did you get to play with dudes on the Phillies then in spring training with guys like Steve Carlton?
How do you know that story? I don't know if you know that story, but it was kind of one of my highlights. When I was 12, when I went back to watch my brother pitch, I used to love Steve Carlton. I mean, I used to pick up my leg like he did. I tried to wind up everything just like Steve Carlton. After the game, we got to go down in the clubhouse, and I got to meet him as a 12-year-old. I mean, just a great opportunity. So when I was finally drafted, and 3 years later, when I went to major league camp, guess who was still there?
Mr. Carlton.
So now I met him as a 12-year-old, had the opportunity to make Phillies team, the roster when he was there. Unfortunately, I didn't make it, but the story thickens. So at the end of 84, AAA with the Phillies organization, I was traded to the Giants and played the year in Phoenix. 86, I was called up. And I did so well when I got called up, they had to release somebody. Steve Carlton. So Steve Carlton gone from the Phillies, then to the Giants. And now I got to really play with him in the major leagues. You know, he was at the end of his career. But again, I did so well, they released Steve Carlton. And I think really in my office, that's about the only stuff I have up is Steve Carlton stuff.
Wow, no, I didn't know that story, man. That's pretty cool. Actually, I've just been learning a lot about Steve Carlton myself, so I'm glad I asked about that.
Yeah. I had the ball right here. I don't know where it went. Right over there, signed Steve Carlton ball. He gave me his helmet as a hitter. He got to wear the helmet without the ear. He was the only one. He gave me a bat. So he knew the story. Obviously, he did not remember me as a 12-year-old, but he was really good to me.
No, that's super cool. Not many guys can say their idol got released in favor of them, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think he went to Minnesota after that, maybe played a half the season, then retired. But
yes, sir. I didn't realize you played Venezuelan Winter League ball. I got to ask you, what was that experience like going to
crazy?
Crazy.
Yeah. The first year, I got invited to go. You know, if you get invited to go to winter ball, that's a good thing. They want you to go down there and work on things. Now, Venezuela is a good league. It's a AA, AAA, and you play with major leaguers.
Yes,
so
sir.
It's a very, very good league. So that's when I did well. And but it was crazy. I saw some crazy things in my life. Fights, fires in the stands. It was good. It was good for a young individual go to a country like that and see how things are. But a lot of crazy things. Didn't go the next year, but 2 years after that, I went back. Ryne Sandberg was there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got to play with them. He was a Philly. Then the next year I didn't go, but the year after that, if they got anywhere near the playoffs, you could only have so many Americans on the roster. And they called me to go back because I'd done so well. and went back, and I was there for a month, and we ended up winning the whole Caribbean World Series. With you win your country in Venezuela. We went to Puerto Rico, played Dominican, Puerto Rico, and Mexico in a round robin tournament, and which our team won. That's called the Caribbean World Series. So that was kind of a nice, got a ring for that too. But
That's cool. I didn't even realize, I guess, yeah, now that you think of it, you did play with Ryno in the minor league. So we just lost him, and that's one of my family's favorite ball players. I got to ask, you got any good Ryne Sandberg stories?
Yeah, it was with the Phillies. See, that team in Venezuela was a team put together by the Phillies and the Cubs. So most of the players came out of there. Ryne down there, when I signed, went to instructional ball, he was there too. So I met him really young, and he was a great big prospect. I got to say, it's terrible he passed away.
Yeah.
When he was in Venezuela, I hate to say this, he didn't impress me much. You could actually, no, I mean this, you could actually knock the bat right out of his hands. I think he was just in between of becoming a really good player. But then as he was traded to the Cubs, he became a superstar and did really well. Great for them. But yeah, got to meet him and his wife way back then, and good person.
Yeah. No, actually, what you've said, I've had two other major leaguers say the same thing, that when he was on the Phillies, he wasn't out. But when he got to the Cubs, he figured it out and really broke out as a player.
Yeah. Yeah, you could knock the bat right out of his hands, and everybody's thinking, what's so good about this guy? But Ruben Amaro, some of these scouts that saw him, they could see. And he had the mentality to be a big leaguer too, and I think that's a lot of it.
Well, you ended up getting traded to the Giants, and you were traded for a pretty impressive guy there too, Al Oliver, and then Randy Martin as well. But when you found out you got traded to the Giants, was that disappointing, or were you excited?
No, I was excited because I'd kind of run my gamut in AAA with the Phillies, 4 or 5 years. I needed a new look. So it was really a blessing that came. They let me know the last day of the season, in 1984. So I went to the Giants. I went to big league camp, pitched really well. I was the last probably couple, 2-3 players sent down, and never got an opportunity there. But in 1986, I got that opportunity. It's kind of a funny story how I got that opportunity also. I was pitching really well in AAA, and the Phillies were playing the Cardinals in St. Louis. And this is how I remember the story. Back then, the Cardinals really had a team built of speed. Willie McGee, Vince Coleman. It was a big ballpark, and they would run. But the Cardinals were winning 8-1, 8-2, 9-something, just killing them. Vince Coleman got on first and stole second. Well, when you're winning 9-2, you don't do that.
Yeah.
Rub it in the Giants' face. Well, then he stole third, and that really made him mad. So his next at bat, I can't remember who was pitching, but they of course drilled him right in the back. And one of the starting pitchers, broke his rib, and Mike Krukow cracked a rib, and that's how I got called up. And so I thought it was going up for 14 days, 21 days. That's probably what they had in their mind too. But when I went up, I pitched so well that I ended up staying.
So when you broke in with the Giants in '86, well, first off, let me just ask, do you remember your big league debut?
I do. Kind of another long story. In AAA, before I got called up, we were playing up in Portland, Vancouver. We were on that swing. I pitched up there. My wife was due any day. So they let me fly back to Scottsdale to be with her, waiting to have the baby. Well, 4 days in Scottsdale, still no baby. And then the phone rings, and it was a friend, Jim Gott, telling me, hey, you're getting called up. I got to get off the phone. So sure enough, I got the call, and I got called up to LA. And, my wife's sitting here pregnant. So we went in that night, had the baby. I flew out the next morning, and I started the next day after that against Fernando Valenzuela. So it really kind of a tough start because it'd been like 8 days, and I really hadn't touched the baseball. I did play catch with my pregnant wife a couple times, to kind of throw a little bit. But I think the first 6 pitches I threw were balls. I kind of had a hard time finding the plate. But after that, I settled down. I think I went 5 or 6 innings, gave up 2 runs against Fernando, but I actually pitched pretty well.
That's cool. So whenever you were breaking in with them in '86, who were some of the dudes on the team that kind of took you under their wing?
Well, Jim Gott, because he was a good friend there. Mike Krukow was always good. Mike Lacoste, whom you know well.
Yes, sir.
Mike, he was always good to me. Him and I were pretty tight. Scott Durrell. There's guys I played in AAA there that I knew. So Mike Krukow really helped me through my career. When I was down, he would talk to me and bring me back. Mike was a true leader of that Giants rotation.
Well, yeah, speaking of that rotation, I got to say that staff is really underappreciated and underrated in general. And so y'all had a manager in Roger Craig who had been a major league pitcher himself. I don't know too many other managers that were former pitchers other than Tommy Lasorda. So I got to ask, as a pitcher yourself, did it help to have a manager that had been a pitcher?
Yeah, I think sometimes as you get old, you forget, you think how good you were back then. But the thing with Roger, he was a good person. He was a good human being, and he knew how to relate to pitchers because we are a little bit different. You got to know what goes through our minds out on that mound. And, he got a lot of credit teaching all the pitchers to throw a split finger fastball, which the year before, that's what I learned in AAA. And that's really the pitch that got me to the big leagues, was that pitch. So Roger was a huge reason that I even got called up and made it, just because of teaching me the split finger and giving me the opportunity.
Well, I want to ask about one of your teammates, the guy you mentioned, Mike Lacoste, a good friend of mine as well. He was telling me about how he was filming what was supposed to be like the first MLB-oriented outdoor show, and that y'all came hunting down in my neck of the woods here in New Mexico. So I got to ask, what was that experience like hunting in places like Chama and other areas of New Mexico? And what was it like just being a part of, with guys from the NRA and filming this?
It was a good time, and I appreciated the invitation for Mike to come down and film it. My problem was I had a gun up here. It was a 7mm Weatherby mag that I could put anywhere and shoot. I was very good with it. But the guide called us from Mexico and said it's got to be a 300 or above, or he wouldn't let us hunt. So I had to run out and bought a 300. I sighted it in. We didn't see a whole lot of bulls, but the first one I did, I was shooting at it and I couldn't hit it. I was probably shooting 7 feet below it and 3 feet to the side of it. But they got a good laugh at me missing it that many times. But finally, we figured it out, knocked it down. But just, the best part of hunting is going out with friends.
Yeah.
It's, taking the animals, but it's really who you go with.
Well, going back to, just playing with the Giants, you were on 2 really good Giants teams. First off, I want to say, looking at your stats in 1987, you probably should have been an all-star. Same with Lacoste.
I was close. And it was after that I kind of hurt my arm a little bit. And next year the stats weren't great. I was, got sent down the bullpen. But going into All-Star break, I was really close. And but then I don't know what happened with my shoulder. I ended up tearing it and having it fixed. But yeah, it would have been nice to make the All-Star team and finish out, with 15, 16 wins. But it didn't happen, but I still had a great year.
Well, I've heard some Giants fans say that 87 team was even better than the 89 team that eventually made it to the World Series. In your view, is that true?
No, no, I
No.
don't. No, we were good. Um, but just I don't think we were where the 89 team was. Probably the pitching staff. No, I will say that. I probably the 87 pitching staff was a little bit better. Because we in '89, Rick Russell, he was older. He was not struggling, but Scotty Gureltz, he was up and down. I was up and down. I was actually pitching out of the bullpen, had a torn rotator cuff, which was very painful to
Yeah.
throw. I remember the first game I got in against Oakland, game one, that was in Oakland out of the bullpen. It literally took me 3 pitches to throw the ball to the catcher. I had to hurry and try to get loose, but my arm was kind of that bad. Once I, got hot a little bit and loose, I was good for an inning or two. But other than that, my arm, the pain would come back. So that was tough. But we did all right. It would have been a whole lot different World Series if that earthquake wouldn't have come. That's a big thing, and maybe you know about that.
Well, yeah, that was going to be my next question because last week was the 36th anniversary of when that happened, and you got on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but yeah. So, what was that experience like? As a person, but also as a player going through that. And first off, how did it affect you as a person?
It made me. There was so much that went on in your mind. I mean, when it hit, I knew it was an earthquake, but I didn't realize how bad it was till about 30 seconds after it hit. But all in all, well, let me tell you the story about the Sports Illustrated cover. When they knew that there wasn't going to be a game, the power was out most all the way through the city. There was some power on in some areas, but not in Candlestick Park. They said, get all your families down on the field and go out through the tunnels and get out of here. So we all go, we were leaving in our cars, but they told us to bring our families down on the field. And this young man, Billy Kill, he was my nephew. He came down on the field and he was crying. He was upset. He was scared to death. So anyway, how the picture was, I just picked him up and started tickling him, trying to, make him laugh and make him forget about what was happening. Somebody took the picture. I don't know where they were, but that's the picture that ended up being on the cover, was me carrying this kid with, his scared looking face,
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how that happened.
Well, that makes the cover even cooler, in my opinion, because when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, man, that's a terrible, scary moment. But to know you took over as, an uncle would in that moment and try to cheer up your nephew, that's impressive. I got to applaud you for that.
I appreciate that, and he was kind of scared of a lot of things, but he ended up being, I don't think he was a U.S. Marshal, but he became an undercover cop. So I respected him a lot for that. But yeah, Billy's a good kid.
Well, then as a player, I know I've heard other Giants players express that it really disrupted y'all's flow and kind of messed with y'all going, back when y'all played the last 2 games of the series. How did that affect you as a player?
That's what was tough, is the first 2 games we have in Oakland, the earthquake hits. Oakland decided to get out of the Bay Area because they had to fix the stadium to make the field playable. Yeah. So they went back to their spring training site. Well, they caught a little heck from doing that, from kind of leaving the Bay Area, where the Giants, we stayed. But what people don't realize is in California, there's lots of earthquakes. And after a great big earthquake, for the next 2 weeks, we would lay in bed at night and we'd have aftershocks. And you were just on edge. You didn't sleep well because you don't know if that's the next big one. So, the next 2 weeks were tough because, like I said, we were just worried about something else happening in our minds. Then when we get back to play the A's again, we get their number one and number two pitchers against, for games 3 and 4, Dave Stewart, Mike Moore, which were probably the top two pitchers in the American League that year. And so it would have been different if we would have got, pitchers 3 and 4, which I think would have been back then Bobby Welch and Storm Davis. But anyway, good experience being able to go to the World Series.
Well, let's cut back a little bit before that, because you did impress the people whenever you pitched against the Cubs in the NLCS. What was that experience like, getting to pitch against them? And now that you mentioned, you got to be teammates with Ryne prior to that, did you get to rib him a little on getting to beat him out there?
No, you don't do that. But no, I got the opportunity. I always pitched well against the Cubs for some reason. There's teams you pitch well against. But, the whole key to the playoffs between us and the Cubs was Andre Dawson. He was struggling. And when he came to the plate, there were guys in scoring position. And, when you're in a slump, he was an out. And he just went in a slump at a wrong time. And I think that's why we were able to beat him like we did. But I think the one game I came in and relieved, I don't know if I went 4 or 5 innings, and walking off in that situation, get a standing ovation. I'll still remember that, and got the win in that game also.
Well, when you wrapped up, let me see real quick. Hold on. Well, when you wrapped up on your time with the Giants, you ended up going to the Oakland A's.
Yeah.
What did you have any other teams looking at you before you joined the A's?
A few. That's kind of a unique circumstance. I was released by the Giants, and I was pitching well. But I had in my contract incentives because of my bad shoulder. The more I stayed healthy, at the end, if I kept being healthy and pitched the games, I got money. So every time I went out there and got money. Well, that year, the Giants weren't going anywhere, and it's a business decision. I think I'd won 1 or 2 games that week or the last 10 days, and got called in the office, and it's kind of weird. Didn't know what was happening, got released. And so that was the tough thing. But I had to clear waivers back then. I think I would 21 days before I could sign with the team. I told my agents, I want to stay on the West Coast or somewhere where my family in spring training in Arizona. I know that's asking a lot, but the A's called. I ended up signing with them.
Did you catch any flack from Giants fans when you went to the A's?
It was good to pitch with the A's, but being in the Bay Area, and Mike can tell you this, sometimes you start getting stale. So you pitch good, bad, you start getting boo birds coming out. Well, that happened in Oakland too. So, and I started pressing, I started overthrowing. And the minute I started overthrowing, I wasn't very good. But I think it would have been a lot different if I would have gone out of the Bay Area and signed somewhere else. But when I was released with the A's, the Twins picked me up, and I got sent to Salt Lake, AAA team. They were going to give me 5 starts to see how I did, then make a decision on me. The first start, I threw really well in Salt Lake. So I was expecting to pitch in another 5 days, went to Albuquerque, and the manager, guys that were my age that I knew, he asked me can you give me 2 innings tonight? And I go, yeah. And I kind of looked at him funny, and he just kind of looked at me. And after the game, I was getting called up to the Twins. But at that point, I was going through a lot, just not really liking the game, and just kind of my heart had left. And I ended up retiring. But one thing I did learn is I learned how to pitch, because that game in Salt Lake, I got out to the mound and I honestly told myself, what the hell am I doing out here? I didn't want to be there. I once I started competing, I was fine. But what I did is I hit my spots, but I was so fluent and natural. I threw a sinker ball, so I had a great pitch. I wasn't overthrowing. In all the years I played baseball, if I would have had that same mental thought, I think my career would have been a lot different, a lot better, just because I didn't overthrow. But at the same time, I didn't want to go up to Minnesota and take some spot on the roster and really not have it, in my heart to go and compete. So that's when I ended up quitting or retiring is a better word.
Well, going back whenever you made the transition from the Giants to the A's, in my opinion, two very polar opposite teams with the personalities that made them up. Because on the Giants, I don't know, you had guys that just screamed hard worker, hustlers, guys like Will Clark, Mike Lucas. Then you go to the A's, and there's a lot of big, cocky, egotistical personalities like Jose Canseco comes to mind. Was there any huge difference there? Was there anything you had to get used to with that?
Yeah, I mean, I love Tony La Russa as a manager. He was a guy who told you the truth, and you respected him, and that's why I think he was such a great manager. But yeah, he had his hands full in the way he managed that team, because you had to manage Canseco. You had to find ways to get him out on the field. Ricky Henderson, as playing against him, nobody liked Ricky Henderson the way he was. I am the greatest and all that.
Yeah.
Well, once I got out of there, I really got to like him. Some say he wasn't smart, but I'll tell you what, he was the smartest street person I've ever seen. So, yeah. But anyway, Mark McGuire, I knew, but really it was Canseco and Ricky that you had to know how to handle them, and Tony did a great job. But a lot of talent over there also.
Yeah, and well, something unique I read about your time with the A's was earlier in the 2020s, the Tampa Bay Rays started employing this strategy that they called the opener, where they'd have a guy come and pitch 1 inning, 2 innings, and then they'd hand it off to someone else. Well, the A's, in I believe 92, I'm not sure which year, they were kind of the first guys to really utilize that strategy. And they went 11 consecutive starts without a pitcher going more than 5 innings. And you were part of a platoon that included Todd Van Poppel and Ron Darling. I got to ask, that's a pretty, I guess, revolutionary thing to do at that time in baseball. How did you feel about that as a pitcher?
It was kind of different because my role was different and it was hard. I would pitch in the bullpen. Then in 5 days, I would start. I would go back in the bullpen, and 10 days I would start. And it was like that. That was very difficult to do, but to sit back and watch how Tony did it, because Rick Honeycutt was the left-handed setup guy. So Rick never pitched more than an inning. And I can't remember if the right-hander that would come in, but he wanted to get the ball into Eckersley's hands as a closer. But yeah, it's just like nowadays. Starters very rarely nowadays go the whole game. I mean, out. So anyway, there was about 3 or 4 guys who knew what their role was. Some guys were innings 5 to 7, Honeycutt set up, Eckersley to close. And he did a good job utilizing everybody else below that to be able to get the ball to Eckersley.
Well, that leads me then to a question that comes off the top of my head then. How do you feel about baseball today and how it's played in the major leagues compared to whenever you were growing up and then whenever you played?
It's so different now. And I'll be honest, I don't watch a whole lot. We watch a little bit of the playoffs, but we'll watch the World Series. My wife, she's a big sports fan. She'll sit and watch every game there is, or football, and she really likes that. But totally different game. These guys come in and they throw as hard as they can. Then they give the ball up. Just pitching, it's a whole new different thing. And I think mechanical, I don't think you're going to see guys pitching nowadays that will last as long.
Yeah.
I think the longevity will be gone, just the way they throw. Here's my biggest thing is the way they act. If they hit a home run, they'll flip a bat or do that. It's kind of become a showmanship, where we played ball and we were more serious. And if the opposing team did that, you hit them in the back or, you did that. But nowadays, I think the players get away with a lot more. It's just the games. And I didn't realize one thing that nowadays catchers, they got a knee down all the time. Back when we played, the catcher was just squatting. But all these guys got a knee on the ground now, and it's kind of different, But anyway, it's still fun to watch them. There's great talent out there nowadays too.
Well, going back to your time with the A's, I noticed your only ejection in your whole time in the MLB came during your time with the A's, and that was because of a fight with the Indians' Carlos Martinez. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Oh, I can't see. He played in Venezuela.
Yeah.
He was a crazy guy. I mean, I heard, and I don't know if this is true, and don't quote me, but the next year down in Venezuela, he took and hit somebody with a bat and maybe went to jail. I don't know. That's just what I heard. Rumor has it. But to be honest with you, I kind of remember him coming after me. But, I know what it was. He swung so hard, I said something. And he looked at me crazy, and he came after me. And I'm going, okay. But I'm glad at that point that Steinbach wasn't catching. We had a catcher who was very fast, and I'm glad he caught him before he got to me. But yeah, I forgot all about that. But that is why he swung so hard that I think I said something, and he looked at me, and then he came to dance, but he didn't quite make the dance.
Well, talking about catchers real quick, who was your favorite dude to have catch you when you pitched?
It was Bob Melvin with the Giants. Like there was 4 or 5 of us that threw the split finger, Mike Lacoste being one of them, myself. Well, the thing about the split finger, they're in the dirt a lot because you want the ball down. It's diving down. You need a catcher that can block the ball. If you have a guy on third base, you want to try to strike the guy out, but there's a chance it's going to bounce it. I knew with Bob Melvin he was going to block that ball, and I don't think he ever had a pass ball in doing so. When I got to Oakland, it was Terry Steinbach most of the time, and he was a good guy. Totally different than Bob Melvin, but yeah, I'd say Bob. I think he manager of the Giants.
Yeah, he was. He was the last manager. They just hired, I think, the head coach of Tennessee to be the manager now.
Really?
Yeah. But that's just what I was going to ask was, so whenever you had guys that you played with that later went on to manage, like Bob Melvin, could you tell then that those kinds of guys had a future in the game as a coach, as a manager?
If you would have told me Bob Melvin would have been a manager, I'd have told him you're crazy. But, he was a smart guy. He went to Cal, and he was a smart guy. Matt Williams, he's a guy. I always thought Will Clark might manage. But I think family life, I don't know if he really wanted to. But Matt Williams, made a good manager. I'm trying to think Al Dreddy was a coach. Robbie Thompson was a coach. A lot of guys were. But, yeah, I would have never picked Bob. But he was an outstanding manager in his career, too.
Well, I know when you finished up playing in the majors, you did go on to coach high school and community college baseball as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that was like for you?
Yeah, I felt I needed to give back, and I love the high school kids. And just working with the pitchers, I loved it. And the thing about high school, you always have 1 or 2 good guys. But to really win a state tournament, you got to have 6 or 7 guys because once you get to key games, you need your pitchers 5 and 6 and 7 guys to come in and win. So I tried to do that, but I still have these guys come up and tell me how much they respected me and still call me. And I enjoy that. Salt Lake College, community college, was a little different experience in the fact that the guys were a little older, but I still like the guys, and they were fun. The biggest thing I had with college is they wanted to win. And of course we wanted to win. But at the same time, I was trying to get these guys to go up to, Division I baseball or have a chance to maybe get drafted. So I still looked at it as a learning experience in junior college, but it was treated more as winning by the head coach. But I love the kids, love to work with them.
That's cool. Let me see. Well, let me ask this then, because your pitching coach, going back to catchers, your pitching coach in Oakland was a catcher, a former catcher, in Dave Duncan. What was that like? Was that any different having a non-pitcher be your pitching coach?
Yeah. But Norm Sherry I believe, was a catcher with the Giants too, with Roger.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and it was a friend, but Dave got credit for a lot of helping guys, and I can see why. But he taught very silently. He really didn't say much, but you knew he was always by you. He wasn't ever second guessing. He was your friend. He was always pulling for you, and he was a family guy too. So when I got released from the A's, I went out, and a couple of guys, we went out and sat down and had a couple cokes. We'll call them cokes. and Dunk came along and just talking with him. And there's things I wish he would have said to me earlier that he said then, but he was just a quiet guy that really respected him.
Well, I'll leave then with two more questions. My first question then will be, what was your favorite memory as an individual in Major League Baseball?
I have to say the World Series was there, but getting called up, was a childhood dream of actually getting to the big leagues, and especially with me, the way it happened, and, leaving my wife pregnant. And of course I wanted her by my side to see game one, see the first game I pitched, but that didn't happen. But, Major League was great, but I love the minor leagues. Most of my best memories and some of our best friends that we still do things with are from the minor leagues, because everybody's striving to get to the big leagues. And when you get to the major leagues, it's just different. Everybody's, family guys, and they go separate ways. But really the minor leagues and getting called up.
Okay, well then, this is a question I ask every single one of my guests, and just to give an example, my last guest, Ray Burris, I call it the little boy moment. He said his little boy moment was when he got to meet Gene Autry, and he was just awestruck. And another example was like Billy Sample. He got to meet Brooks Robinson, and Billy Sample didn't think much of himself as a player, but then Brooks Robinson the next day brought him a stack of Billy Sample baseball cards to give to him. And so I want to ask, what was your little boy moment that left you awestruck during your whole time in baseball? And I'm guessing you already answered it with Steve Carlton.
Yeah, that's Steve Carlton. Bar none. Just, he was a quiet man, so it was kind of not fun, but different to go up and try to talk to him, because he didn't talk to very many people. He kind of kept on his own. And I remember we were playing a game against the Dodgers back in spring training, and there was a pitcher out on the mound. Everybody knows, I'm not going to say his name. He got to first base, got a base hit, and he's over talking to Steve Garvey. And Carlton was sitting there, and he looked at me and he said, "Don't ever do that." But you're a pitcher. He wants to be your friend. He's trying to make you nice, and Carlton was, don't you ever do that. He is your enemy. A man of few words, but that's something I'll always take from Steve.
Well, thank you for that story, and thank you very much for your time. Before we leave, is there anything else you'd like to add or say?
No, I appreciate it. I know we had a hard time getting together. I'm busy up here with family and kids, but I'm certainly glad we did. I had a good time, and when you see Mike, give him some crap, tell him hello.
I for sure will. Thank you, Mr. Downs. You have a great rest of your night.
All right, thanks. See ya.
See you.